Communist Albania's last leader, Ramiz Alia, inherited one of the world's most isolated regimes after Enver Hoxha's death in 1985. He ruled for roughly 7 years, cautiously opened the system to more reform, and then completely lost power in the country's first free elections in 1992. Alia was then sentenced to 5 years in prison, released, then imprisoned again. He then escaped prison during the 1997 Albanian riots to France before returning to Albania, where he died in 2011, as the last face of a fallen dictatorship. Todor Zivkov ruled Bulgaria longer than anyone else in Eastern Europe, 35 years of tight Soviet loyalty and quiet repression. But as communism began to crumble in 1989, even his own party turned on him. He was ousted in a palace coup, later convicted for embezzlement, and spent his final years under house arrest. Zivkov died in 1998 after writing his memoirs, and surprisingly remains quite popular in Bulgaria, with a 55% approval rating as of 2014. Czechoslovakia's last communist leader, Gustav Husak, came to power after the Soviets crushed the Prague Spring and spent the next 2 decades enforcing the repression known as normalization. He ruled Czechoslovakia with quiet obedience to Moscow, but by 1989, the Velvet Revolution swept him out. He resigned just before Václav Havel, a former political prisoner, took office. Husak died in 1991, a symbol of a stifled era fading fast. He subsequently never faced trial. Egon Krenz took over East Germany just weeks before the Berlin Wall fell, and ruled for only 50 days. He promised reforms, but the crowds wanted freedom. As the wall crumbled, so did his grip on power. After reunification, Krenz was convicted for border killings and served time in a German prison. He remains one of the shortest and most symbolic leaders of a dying regime. As of 2025, he's still alive and lives in Dierhagen, a small municipality in eastern Germany. Hungary's a bit of a weird one because their longtime leader, János Kadar, died in 1989, just 3 months before the Berlin Wall fell. As such, his successors were only in power for short periods of time, but the last communist leader, Rezső Néz, wanted to reform Hungary and implement a market economy, and wanted to get rid of the communist system anyway. He was elected to parliament briefly before subsequently stepping down. He later retired quietly, receiving a pension cut in 2013 though, a light punishment compared to others on this list, but then again, his leadership wasn't nearly as brutal either. Wojciech Jaruzelski led Poland through its most turbulent years, a communist general in dark glasses who declared martial law in 1981 to crush the Solidarity movement. But by the end of the decade, he helped negotiate a peaceful transition. In 1990, he stepped down as Poland's last communist president. He was one of the few leaders that believed communism had truly failed and that he would instead become a social democrat. He also later apologized for allowing his country to participate in the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968. Controversial to the end, Jaruzelski was charged with crimes in 2006, however he had poor health and died in 2014. Some saw him as a traitor, but by others he was a man who helped avoid civil war in Poland. Nicolae Ceausescu ruled Romania like a king, complete with a cult of personality, secret police and an enormous palace. But in 1989, after years of brutal austerity and repression, the people finally turned on him. He tried to flee by helicopter, was captured and was executed by firing squad on live television alongside his wife on Christmas Day in 1989. Ceausescu died as he ruled, defiantly, the most dramatic fall of any communist leader in Europe. Yugoslavia's last communist leader, Slobodan Milosevic, rose from the ashes of Yugoslav communism, trading Marx for nationalism. He kept the old structures but fueled brutal wars that tore the Balkans apart, most notably that in Bosnia. Ousted in 2000 after mass protests, he was arrested and sent to The Hague for war crimes. Milosevic died in his cell in 2006, unrepentant and on trial, still blaming the West for his downfall. The USSR's last communist leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, tried to save the Soviet Union by opening it up, with glasnost and perestroika policies. Instead, he accidentally triggered its own collapse. Revered abroad but resented at home, he stepped down in 1991 as the red flag was lowered over the Kremlin for the last time. Gorbachev has a strange legacy. He ended an empire without firing a shot, mostly, but may have leaned too eagerly into Western praise. His later appearances in things like Pizza Hut ads only deepened the divide between how he was seen abroad and at home. He died in 2022, remembered more fondly in the West than in the country he once ruled.